Shalom Aleichem. Welcome to the 11th Annual Women of Valor. I'm Todd Salovey, the Associate Artistic Director of San Diego Repertory Theater and the Artistic Director of the Lipinsky Family San Diego Jewish Arts Festival.
My name is Ali Viterbi, and I'm the Associate Producer of the festival and the Director and co-writer of this year's Women of Valor, along with writers Todd Salovey, Leah Salovey, Sarah Price-Keating, and JFest Assistant Producer Becca Myers. It is our honor to share this year's selected Women of Valor. Anti-Defamation League Regional Director TAMMY GILLIES, Chair of the San Diego Jewish Academy Heidi Gantwerk, Chief Impact Officer at the Jewish Community Foundation SHARLEEN WOLLACH, Rebbetzin Chaya Ertel, Jewish Community Foundation Board Chair Janet ACHEATEL, and Holocaust survivor Pearl Recht.
Every year, we donate all the ticket proceeds of Women of Valor to Jewish charities in San Diego. This year, our beneficiaries are the 3 Jewish high schools, Torah High, Sky High, and the San Diego Jewish Academy, as well as the San Diego Jewish Community COVID-19 Emergency Fund. You can donate generously by clicking on the link at the end of this video.
This year's honorees teach us how we can be together, even virtually, in community. And we hope that through hearing their stories of joy, of grief, of commitment to their community, and of courage, we can all weather this storm together.
Tonight, we honor Heidi Gantwerk. Thank you so much for watching, and please enjoy A Woman of Valor.
פתח בלב בלה ושאלה לא יצר גמלת הוא טוב ולא רע כל ימי חייה דרשת צמר ופשתים ותת בחפץ גביה היסק אני עוד זוכר ממרחק תביא לחמה חגרה בעוז מתניה ותאמץ זרעתיה.
A woman of valor, who shall find?
She is more precious than pearls.
She seeks out wool and flax and cheerfully does the work of her hands.
She is like trading ships, bringing food from afar.
She gets up while it is still night to provide for her household.
She invests herself with strength, and her arms are powerful.
She opens up her hands to the poor and reaches out to the needy.
ACHEATEL mi'imsa, a woman of valor, who shall find?
My life is woven throughout with Jewish rhythms. My work is Jewish. My life is Jewish. I mean, my kids are all active. If you had asked me when we first moved to San Diego if this is what my life would be like, I would have never in a million years have thought that this thread would weave together all the different parts of my life. When my husband Andy and I first came to San Diego, we did not know a soul. I will never forget our first year here. We were by ourselves on Yom Kippur, and I wanted to make a break the fast. So I ordered a cake from Baked by Etta in La Jolla, and I told them that it was for just the 2 of us. I went to pick up the cake, and it could have fed like 20 people. I started to cry because I felt so alone, and that's what inspired me to get involved at Beth Israel, and particularly with Rabbi Cantor Arlene Bernstein. Those people are my family. And it was lucky that our skills and talents were right for the congregation at that time. Our music as a family is just not something that most families can do. You know, when the boys come home, they just sit down and they start jamming, and Andy sits down and he starts jamming, and you know, as a vocalist, when a bunch of instrumentalists sit down and start jamming, it's a little harder to insert yourself. into that because he'll play like 9,000 verses of some song, but I love having the music in the house. I mean, it's funny, other musicians will say, wow, the four of you just sit down and you start playing and you just know what to do. I mean, nobody has to count, it's just natural. You all hear each other. And it's true, we do. Particularly with Andy and I. I mean, we met through music, so music has been a part of this family since its first little embers. I was a sophomore and Andy was a junior at Yale, and well, he was a piano player for an improv group called the Viola Question, and they had at every show an intermission act. And at one show they had invited the Yale Mime Troupe to perform, but it was a hoax. There was no Yale Mime Troupe. So here we are like 3 days before the performance and they needed an intermission act. And my roommate said, hey, my roommate's a really good singer. And they were all like, oh yeah, sure. And Andy was like dreading it. So I come in and I pick some songs. You know, it was Natural Woman and Easy to Be Hard from Hair and Locomotion by Carole King. I mean, my musical tastes have developed a little since then. He was actually shocked that I could sing. Now, Andy also happened to be the piano player in a really good band. And I had kind of decided that A, I thought he was cute, and B, I really wanted to be in the band. So I kind of stalked him. I went to lunch at his dining hall and just sort of coincidentally bumped into him a couple of times. I mean, I don't think I'd ever been to luncheon to eat at that dining hall before, but all of a sudden it was the best food. So when Andy and I got married, well, he grew up in a Jewish but completely secular household. I mean, his father was an old school Freudian psychoanalyst. And organized religion is not something that Freudian psychoanalysts believe deeply in. And at our wedding, we had this big debate about whether to be married by a rabbi. Andy thought a judge would be just fine, and he didn't understand why we needed a rabbi. And I said to him, you know, do you want to get married? I mean, raising my kids Jewish was just not something I ever even thought about. It was essential. You know, you have certain expectations when you have kids about what that's going to look like and what it's going to feel like. And you read all the books and they're wonderful. And it doesn't always look like that. We went through a lot of challenging years with our oldest son, who is brilliant and talented and remarkable. And he's also on the autism spectrum. And getting through that changed us. It called upon strength and creativity and flexibility, great love, and a lot of hard work. And then we had twins. There's that. I mean, you know, you deal with what you're handed, and they are who they are, and you react in kind. They were very energetic. We had a lot of drywall repair. Now the heartbeat of my Jewish life is all of us. All three kids are off at colleges across the country, and all are deeply involved in designing and running Shabbat services. And I'm not telling them to do that. I mean, I'm not telling them to go to Hillel. I had no control over that. It's just become part and parcel of who we are and what we do. I mean, Isaac is like a yeshiva bacher. If you want to look at how crazy our Jewish life is, it's that I talk to people around the country in Jewish circles, and if I mention Isaac's name, they've heard of him, they've read him, or they've seen his Smash Mouth Aramaic translation. And these are people from like Orthodox communities. So again, I mean, how could I have expected that? I look at a picture of Isaac chanting Torah, and you know, it could have been a picture of my great-grandfather. He's there in his talit, and and he's surrounded by other men, and they're to lead. Well, there are a few women there, so in that sense it's different. But in some ways, Isaac is going back to the way my great-grandparents lived. I'm really proud of the life we've made. Now, professionally, I started my own consulting company, and 7 years in, we're still okay. As you think of the way I've touched Jewish organizations in town, there's just a lot of them. Like Beth Israel, obviously, Hillel of San Diego, Hadassah, the JCC, Federation, the Jewish Community Foundation, the Butterfly Project, Ner Tamid, and of course, Jewish Academy. Oh, I recently worked with the Jewish Poverty Convening. I love it, and I'd love to do more. I ran a series of dialogues where we had staunch Republicans and highly progressive Democrats in the room. And there was so much mistrust at the beginning. I mean, we spent hours working through that stuff. Now, when you think about the federal budget and spending priorities, what does that mean? It's people. How do you spend money on people? And at the end of the day, one of my participants and I were interviewed, and the interviewer kept trying to get at the divide. I mean, you couldn't possibly have agreed on that. I mean, you must have been battling on that. And not me, but the participant said, look, we all want what's best for the people in this country. And when it came right down to it, we saw eye to eye on a lot of things. Not everything, but we really came to understand each other. You know, there's this whole old line that when you got 2 Jews, you need 3 synagogues. So I spend a lot of time mapping out where I agree with people. And then when we don't see eye to eye, it can be a little more civil. It doesn't happen in one conversation. It takes time. Trust has to be built. So when I'm working, that's what I do. And it's hard work. It takes effort and restraint and constant self-evaluation to not want to argue or correct somebody. So my ground rule for dialogue is, don't try this at home. It's not easy. And of course, I keep my sense of humor. I have found that in the most difficult of situations, finding a way to laugh and getting other people to laugh, it can really engage people and diffuse tension. If you get everybody laughing together, it changes things. I think starting my own business, you know, going off on my own and hanging that shingle, that was a really big test for me. I still question it all the time, especially now in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, I run meetings for a living. But I felt like I had something to offer, and I wanted to contribute locally. When you run your own business, you have moments where you think, this was just a terrible idea. But I've done better each year than the year before. People say to me like, oh, wow, you sing on stage, you're so brave. But to me, that doesn't really feel brave. It just feels natural. I mean, and I'm confident because I'm a pretty decent singer. I mean, I'm not a professional, but I'm okay. What feels brave to me is maybe not the things that other people would look at me and think, wow, that's really brave. Like, there are former women of valor that I talk to all the time when I'm trying to start something new. This feels brave to me. This takes courage. To put myself out this way, singing on stage, no problem. And especially now, in this time of isolation, every week we are really trying to make sure that our Friday night services at Beth Israel is really something special and meaningful. That means at this point, because there's 4 of us, here we have a full-on recording studio in our family room. I mean, it's been taken over. We have a 4-channel mixer, we have microphones, and even though sometimes it's tiring and late, that feels really important to me. I see the responses that we get to these services from people around the country. I mean, my aunt, who lives in Massachusetts, she sets her whole Saturday around watching our services. And I feel like, look, we have incredible attendance at these services. I mean, we have like hundreds of people tuning in. There's a need for connection and community right now. It makes people feel that they're a part of something bigger than themselves when our lives have gotten so small all of a sudden. And it makes me happy to make a difference. That's where my intrinsic motivation comes from. It comes from doing something that matters and then looking back a year later and knowing I really made a difference.
If we don't have high holiday services, how are we a community? This is a conversation that we're having every day within the community.
I don't know what we'd be doing without Zoom.
I was on 4 Zoom Seders this year. I was exhausted. But for the first time ever, I was able to be with my people on the East Coast and the West Coast.
It's an opportunity to hear people speak from anywhere in the world that you never would have gotten to hear before. I'm trying to find some silver linings.
You know the Israel festival the Federation put on? They usually have about 600 people attend the event. They were very concerned about doing it online. But this year, it was something like 4,000 people.
We're lighting candles on Friday nights with my family. We're playing beer pong with my sister's family. I've had happy hours with friends. Those kinds of connections are more important now than ever.
I'm really hopeful that when it's all said and done, people are going to look back at this time as this historical moment where they were given lots of choices and really made good ones.
The part that has been so heartwarming to me is the amount of people that have stepped up to make calls, to reach out to say, "Are you okay? How can we help?" The Jewish Community Foundation managed to raise $2.1 million from people who are all struggling. That, to me, is the Jewish way.
It's not just about us anymore. It's about making ourselves uncomfortable so that somebody else can be comfortable. It's the ultimate level of social awareness.
It's not the haves and have-nots. It's not the religious and the not religious. Everybody is in the same boat.
Hopefully, when we come out of this, the parts of the community that we took for granted will now appreciate more than ever before.